Have you ever felt like a starter husband or a starter wife? You know, that person that helps somebody else grow, mature, and become a better communicator? Or for somebody else to get that finished version of them? If so, this episode is going to be for you. You heard? Because welcome back to Raw for Romance. I'm your host, O. And here, we're going to always keep it real about dating, you know? And tonight, we're going to be talking about something that everybody felt but never discussed. The starter husband, starter wife. How did we even get here? You feel me? Before we gonna get into that topic, I'm gonna put a disclaimer out there for y'all, just so nobody get it confused or want to try to twist up my lines. This episode isn't about, you know, blaming somebody that either won or that lost. It's not about saying that, your ex got the happy ending and you didn't, per se. That's not what this conversation is going to be about. It's going to be about growth and about the role that we played in another person's life or another person's journey in life. Okay. When I first heard the term starter husband, I immediately understood it to the T because it definitely had me looking at past relationships and made me think, you know, like, damn, they got married, started a family, built the life that we talked about. You know, in your relationship, you talk about these things, especially when you're trying to make it long term. And if we're going to be honest, it can make you feel like the practice run. You helped build this house from the ground up, from the whole foundation up, just to realize you weren't good enough to live in it. And that is crazy when you think about it. I think a lot of people felt that, but the older I've gotten, the more I started to look at it differently. Because one thing people don't speak about is how much happens inside of a relationship. Maybe you taught somebody how to listen, be patient, how to be appreciated, or what effort looks like. And no, that doesn't mean that you weren't perfect. Hell, I know I wasn't. Ain't nobody here in this world perfect. But every relationship leaves lessons. Behind those lessons become part of the person they eventually become. One thing that I used to think about, which would bother me, was feeling like I had to pay for somebody else's mistakes. You know, I can't tell you how many times I felt like I was being judged from somebody else's past. And I was spending time proving to them that I wasn't going to leave, you know, I wasn't going to repeat the same mistakes that their past did, and it gets exhausting, truly exhausting. It's tiring. You feel me? Eventually, you start asking yourself, why? You know, why do I get judged for who I am instead of who hurt you before me? I'm myself. I'm always gonna be myself. So whoever's before you, got nothing to do with me. But that's when I realized, you know, I've dealt with baggage from people before me. I've also left lessons, behind. Maybe not intentionally, and where the conversation started. It started changing for me because I stopped looking at it as they got the better version, or they got the person that I wanted, and started looking at it as maybe I helped them, become the better version for somebody else. Think about that. Let that sink in. I'm always gonna be dropping gems and jewels, so in case you're ever wondering, always tune in because this is what I do. You feel me? Um, maybe they communicate better because they couldn't communicate better when you was with them. Maybe they listen better because the whole time you trying to express feelings and emotions, and they not seeing it, they're not hearing it because they don't want to. You feel me? And now somebody else is holding them accountable for it. So now they remember what you said and all the opinions that you voiced to them about how you felt. And now they're dealing with somebody else that's doing the same, but now they want to be with that person more than they want to be with you, right? More than they wanted to be with you. Let me correct that. So now they're gonna listen, they're gonna tune in, they're gonna tap in with that person. And now it's gonna make that relationship even more stronger. Which is weird, but it makes sense. You feel me? Or they understand effort better now because you showed them. You showed them what effort looks like. So now when they see it in somebody else, now they're gonna pay attention to it. You know, and while it's easy to focus on what they gained, we rarely talk about what we gain because we do gain something for them, and because growth, it didn't just happen to them; it happened to us too. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago, or the person I was in past relationships. Life, life has changed me. Experience changed me too. Just like heartbreak will always change somebody. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. You know, I communicate differently. I understand boundaries, peace, and what I want over what I don't want. Always remember that. Always keep that in mind. Not everything that you're gonna want is actually what you're gonna want. If that makes sense to y'all. I know it makes sense to me, but yeah. And most importantly, I understand that not every relationship is supposed to last forever. You know, that was hard, a hard lesson for me to learn because for a long time I looked at relationships like investments. You put in time, effort, and love, and naturally you expect it to last forever. But life doesn't always work that way. Sometimes people come into your life for a reason, for a season, or for a lifetime. That doesn't mean relationships were failures. Not every relationship was a failure. That doesn't mean those relationships you know, were always meant to be. That's the part I think we all get wrong, right? Just because it didn't last forever doesn't mean it didn't matter, you know? Maybe it taught you self-respect, boundaries, you know, what love looks like versus what it don't look like. Either way, there's always going to be value in it. The biggest shift for me happened when I stopped asking why did somebody else get the finished version, and I started asking myself, what version of me is the next person going to get? And if, again, we're always going to be honest here. So, honestly, the next woman isn't going to get the same version of me. And I treat everybody differently. I don't go into every relationship treating them the same as I did in my past relationship because it doesn't work that way. Not at all. Remember that and think about that. That shit is makes you think about things, you know? Because some people leave one relationship and they get into another relationship and they just don't even try to change. They just want to stay that same person, meaning that they're going to treat you the same way they treated their ex. And it didn't work with their ex. So what makes you think it's going to work with the next? Gems. Got these gems for you, these jewels. You feel me? Be like, ooh, he on to something. He really on to something. And like I said, treat the same. I don't treat the next relationship the same like I did my last, right? So, for example, the next chick that I get with, she's gonna get somebody wiser, somebody calmer, somebody who learned from his mistakes and knows himself better. And that's when you realize maybe starter husbands or wives aren't failures. Maybe they're builders, part of somebody's growth story. Maybe they're part of, you know, yours, your growth story. Who knows? So if you ever feel like a starter husband or a starter wife, or looked back and wondered why it didn't work out, always remember you were never a waste of time. Never just a stepping stone. You were a part of a chapter in that person's life. And guess what? Chapters matter. You feel me? Because without chapters, none of us become who we are supposed to be. And not everybody. It's raw for romance. I'm your host, O. And here, like I always say, the motto, we're going to keep it real about dating. And if you feeling this, you already know what to do. You heard? I've been keeping it raw over romance. Real conversation over slow dance. Ain't with the fake, I don't hold hands. If it ain't authentic, I don't do the scams. You gonna front, I don't play them games. I've seen true love turn into flames. Just keeping it real, I don't need the fame. Raw over romance, it's not a game.